Hey guys, it's John, small town, small time bookseller here with another video, and got some stories to tell today. I've got an issue that came up. I'll put it in the title of the video, I'm sure, to try to entice a few clicks maybe, but it is actually something that happened. So it was an interesting thing that worked out in the end, and I'll be glad to regale you all with tales of eBay horrors eventually, but I'll do that. And I also got a bunch of sales today. Today's going to be talking about what sold last February, so first half of February 2025, and because that's what I do. I sell stuff on eBay, and then about 6 to 8, maybe 10 months later, I'll tell you about it. It's a great business model, isn't it? And so I'm trying, that's kind of what I do. I buy things cheap around here, Goodwill bins, Goodwill, a few other little thrift stores, and then I turn around and sell them on eBay, and I kind of tell you what's sold. And last video was my very first ever thrifting haul video, and I got a lot of very positive responses. Thank you all very much. And so I think I will continue to do those. I was trying to think of something like I could do, like maybe Thrift With Me Thursdays and What Sold Wednesdays, or Shop With Me Sundays, or some form of alliteration. But we haven't decided. I haven't decided exactly how this is going to work. I may not. That'd be if I was actually trying to put out videos regularly, which might be helpful to force me to do that. But anyways, what I do is I'll come on here and I'll tell you what I sold. I don't do garage sale videos or yard sale videos. I heretofore have not done any Goodwills, the Goodwill bins. Looking at my hands sitting next to a goat. It was a very queer carriage full of passengers altogether, and as a rule seemed to be that they should all speak in turn. He went on with, "She shall have to go back from here as luggage." That's what the hand said, sitting next to the goat. So, as it were, what should I do first? You want to hear some what solds? And then we'll do what happened. I've got 34 sales. So I've only did half. I had 70 sales in February. And so I just break it up. I don't want to do 70 sales in one video. So I kind of broke it up that way, half and half. So we're going to go through the first half. How about I put a little mark here? We'll go up about halfway through here till we get to some $20 sales. And then I'll tell you what happened. And that way, you can skip forward these if you like. Just hit the little 10 seconds ahead till you see me start talking about something else. So here's what sold in February. Starting off with this one, a hat. This is a Lone Star Beer hat. It sold for $7. There's actually quite a fair number of hats in this month that sold. So I've got so stinking many hats that I have to list. I'm actually thinking what I'm going to do. We're going to have a community garage sale coming up in about a month. That'll be my thing that I sell. I may just put them all out there on the ground and say, buck a hat, or something like that. See if I can get rid of, because I have like construction bags full of hats that I have never listed. The next sale was also a $7 sale. This was Spirited Away on Blu-ray. This was a Studio Ghibli production. And then another video, E.T., a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray of E.T. sold for $8. And then the first book of the day, Instructions for Assembling and Operating Lionel Trains, a 1948 copy of that. I've been mentioning it lately that I did get all this train stuff from an estate sale quite a while back. So, this was quite a while back, but it was even before that. And so they're still selling. Then the next one is also from that same sale, a $9 sale for Greenberg's Guide to Lionel Trains. When I got all the train stuff, I had so much little pamphlets and things. They had a price on them of each thing was however much. I just remember she said $75 for all the books plus a bunch of other stuff I was getting to. So it was a good deal. I didn't pay much at all for each of the books. Then we had a cookbook, 300 Years of Carolina Cooking, including game preparation, sold for $9.60. And then I must have put up a percent off sale or something, because the next one is also $9.60. That was complete C.S. Lewis Signature Classics. I've sold this one a couple times. That's a good version of that. I mean, it doesn't get a lot of money, but it sells. And then we had a 1963 copy of 1984 for $9.60. That was a 29th printing, but as a vintage copy of George Orwell's 1984. And then another not a book. 'Twas a hat indeed. Lone Star Feed Fertilizer hat. $10. I find that ranching, feed stores, that kind of stuff, those hats sell really, really well. A copy of the Pilgrim's Progress sold for $12. And then another hat. This is a Continental Airlines hat. That design on it is called shark tooth is what I called it. And if you find like a shark tooth designed hat that's a vintage football, for example, football teams, those can be worth like hundreds. But I always look for that shark tooth design. But this was a Continental Airlines one. Did not sell for hundreds, but sold for 12. Hundreds of pennies. And then a copy of War and Peace, 1947 copy of War and Peace, sold for $12. That was one of those International Collectors Library editions. Those are always real nice looking. And then yet another hat. This was Nichols State University Colonels. A hat sold for $13. I came across a whole bunch of Nichols State hats, and so I bought them all up. I think it was at the SPCA thrift store. If I were to get them for $1 a piece. And so that one sold for $13. A 22nd edition of a Machinery Handbook sold for $16. And then a Bible, a 1984 NIV indexed Bible sold for $16. And an English Indonesian dictionary sold for $17.60. Okay, break time. All right, we're going to have a little break here. Let me tell you my tales of near woe, my tales of, for sure, consternation. And I'll tell you what happened. So, if you've been watching the channel lately, you know that I've been struggling with shipping dishes and having them break. So, a few days ago, I got a message from eBay. It said somebody had initiated a return. And it was dishes. I was like, oh, yeah. And a lot of other things similar to that. I won't elaborate here. It is a children's show. Family show, I should say. Anyhow, the buyer put in some pictures of the dishes. I recognized the dishes. Said 3 of them broke. And that they were only wrapped in a single piece of brown paper. I thought, I wouldn't have done that. So I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? You know, I was going to have to accept their term. Oh, also he said, I have a video of me unboxing if you would like that as well. So I was like, I'm doing a terrible job of telling the story. So he said there's a video. He said it's only wrapped in brown paper and it was shipped FedEx. So that's what got me thinking, okay, I have never shipped anything FedEx. And I certainly wouldn't have wrapped them up in just brown paper. So I said, you know, can you provide the video? Which he offered to provide a video. And his next response was very long, very kind of angry. He's saying, I've already sent you the pictures. You need to accept this return. This is horrible packaging. It came barely wrapped in brown paper in a FedEx box. But then he said, I also bought 6 plates from another eBayer, which were well wrapped in bubble wrap, and none of them broke. And I'm like, ha! I've been watching a lot of detective shows on Acorn, like on Amazon Prime, where all the British shows. So, it didn't take me too long to figure this out. So I responded with, I think you have the sellers confused. I said, you can look at my tracking that is supplied, and you can see that mine shipped USPS. And, After his long diatribe, at the very end said, "I don't have time for any more messages. You need to accept this return or I will get eBay involved." I did respond with explaining that I did not ship FedEx and I've never used a Home Depot box, as he said, or wrap things in just paper. I use bubble wrap. And I'm pretty sure it's the other eBayer is the culprit and who he should be getting the refund from. So a day passed and no response. The return was still up there. So I called eBay. And the good thing on that is I got somebody right away. It's like, "Would you like somebody to call you back?" I said, "Yes." And less than a minute later, somebody called me back. Real nice guy that was as helpful as he could be, but he looked through all the messages and he agreed with me. He said, "Yes, it looks like it's pretty obvious that you are not the sender of these plates." But his advice was for me to go ahead and accept the return. And then when I received the items, I could then put in a complaint saying that those were not the items I mailed. And I said, "They're the same items as he bought from another eBayer. How would I prove that these are not the ones I sent? They're the same thing. I couldn't look at these and be like, oh, these are a different model or something than what I sent. It's the same thing that's in the pictures." So he said, "Yeah, I understand." He said, "But the reason that the returner wants to return these, the buyer wants to return these, is a valid reason, and therefore you should accept the return and pay for the shipping." And I was like, I don't think so. I said, he actually asked me, he said, "What would you like us to do?" And I said, "I think you need to reach out to this buyer and say, hey, this was brought to our attention. It appears that this was not the person who sent the dishes. It's another buyer, and that's who you need to be filing the claim against." But he said, "Well, we can't do that. But I just think you should accept the return." So I was not going to accept the return. That didn't sit right with me at all. The day passed. This morning, the eBay, the return was gone. So the buyer obviously had read my message, or maybe eBay reached out to him. I don't know. And I even got positive feedback on my dishes saying, well packaged, nicely wrapped, so they did not break. So I sent some dishes through the mail and they didn't break. I was so happy. But I don't know. What do you think? Is eBay, why would they tell me to accept the return when they agreed that obviously it wasn't me? If you got a return and they're saying that a return request for an item you didn't sell. But if he hadn't mentioned that he bought the same dishes from another eBayer and that the other eBayer shipped to FedEx, I wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. I wouldn't have any clue. I would have just accepted the return. If all he did was show those pictures of the broken plates and said, hey, these are broken, I need to return them, I would have been like, darn it. And I would have done it. But luckily he got a little mouthy and worked out for me. But that's my story. Back to the sales. Where are we at? We're up to $20 sale. DVDs, the Paul Newman collection, sold for $20, 6 CD set. And then a book of Sonia Delaney, Art into Fashion, sold for $20 as well. And then we had this one, Praxis. Business Education Content Knowledge by Educational Testing Groups, over $20. Praxis 2. Praxis. We're talking about Praxis. Not the game that we love, but Praxis. We're talking about Praxis. Sorry. A very unfortunately named gas station called the Come and Go hat sold. This was a nice copy, a version of nice, a nice one. It was really clean and all. $23 for that. It had a little bottle opener on it. So $23 for a hat. I'm pretty happy about that one. And that's not even the best hat of the day here. So, and then this book of Marvel hip hop covers sold for $24. A book called 50 to 55 Years. Are You Listening? sold for $25. I, for one, am not listening. Thank you very much. A book on Cessna aircraft, 2008, sold for $25. Electrical Engineering Fundamentals, Purdue University lectures, sold for $26.25. And then we had another medical book, John Hopkins Internal Medicine Board Review, sold for $28. Another classic, 1989 copy of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from the Franklin Library Mystery Series, sold for $30. Another hat, still not the most expensive hat of the day, but this was a Dale Earnhardt and GM Goodwrench service. Had both Dale Earnhardt and GM Goodwrench on it. So I thought that was going to be a pretty good one. It was new with tags, and it sold for $37.50. A cookbook signed by Ted Nugent and I think his wife, Shemaine. Is that his wife? I don't really care. But it's $37.50 for the Ted Nugent signed cookbook. It's called Kill It and Grill It was the name of the cookbook. And then an LP, another Nota book. I had lots of Nota books today. Balance and Composure. The Things We Think We're Missing. It was a pink. The vinyl itself was pink, which had a lot of different colors, but the pink seemed to be more rare than others. And that's over $42. So that's not bad. I got that at Goodwill bins too. And then a dictionary, the Pashto and Dari to English dictionary. Afghan, Pakistan languages, $42 on that one. And this was a cool find. So I was at the, this is an SPCA thrift store. It's a picture, framed picture of the 2008 Houston Dynamo soccer team, signed by each member on the picture, 32 different autographs on there, including Brian Ching. And Brian Ching was the only name that I recognize. I'm not a huge soccer fan, but even I knew Brian Ching. He had been on the U.S. national team when they won the World Cup, whenever that was, prior to 2008. I can't remember when it was. But he was in the picture, and his signature was on there. So that was the name that I put in the title. And there may have been others that soccer people would know, but I didn't know. But that's over $50 for that. And then here's the big hat sale of the day. This Polo Ralph Lauren Southwestern Aztec 5-panel hat sold for $65. If you get one of these in good condition, it can be well over $100. When the guy offered it, he said he would be trying to repair this hat. So that's why I'd put it up for like $100. And he's like, he gave a pretty good explanation about that. It's really too much, because of the condition. I'm going to have to put money in to repair it or try to repair it myself. And so he offered me $65, which I took. But look for those Polo Ralph Lauren 5-panel hats, especially this Aztec pattern. So for $65. And then the big sale of the week, or the half a month as it was, the Encyclopedia of Cajun and Creole Cuisine. Sold for $85 for that. So there you go. That brings us to a grand total. Oh, I didn't do a grand total. Let me do it real quickly here. 12, carry 2, 10, 14. So 4, 2, 3, $342.65 on 33 sales. And that broke down to Nota books. I had 12 Nota books for $294.50. Average of $24.54. Nailed it. And then my book sales were 21 books for $482.15. $22.96 average, which isn't not bad at all, but not quite to where my $25 goal is. And you know what? I think that's about all I got for today. I've got some video footage of recent thrifts and hauls, and I'm going to be putting those together and setting those out in a day or two. So look forward to that. There actually is some video footage from a Goodwill bins in there, although I still get kind of nervous filming inside. So I'm working my way up to actually looking at my hands. I go on through all of the stuff in the bins. But right now it's just kind of here I'm at the bins, look at all the books, and I kind of talked about some of there's a whole bunch of cookbooks, and I was talking about some of the cookbooks I was picking up and which ones I was just tossing aside and hucking at little kids as they ran by. So anyhow, look forward to that, I hope. And thank you for watching, subscribing, commenting, all the things. And hope that you are selling the heck out of a bunch of stuff. And I will see you sooner rather than later. Adios.